Hello and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour. I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, one of the civic partners for our show. Today we're going to be talking about why childcare should be an issue for businesses here in New York State. And my guest is Bruce Stewart. Bruce is the Executive Director of the St. Lawrence County Child Care Council and a previous guest on the show. So welcome back, Bruce. It's nice to have you back here. Childcare is too often framed as an individual problem left up to parents to solve on their own, rather than being seen as a public good. But this approach ignores the important role that childcare plays in the economy. Any sound economic strategy to ensure a prosperous, strong, and secure American economy moving forward must invest in childcare. And so what we're going to discuss today is why employers should look at childcare for their employees as a workforce development strategy that will positively impact their bottom line. So Bruce, let's jump right in. Tell us why employers should care about their employees' childcare issues.
Well, first of all, I think that hopefully that would become very obvious, but if we need to look in terms of quotes or statistics coming from entities that business people are going to respect and understand, I think we have to put down some basic perspective, and that is every week in New York State, approximately 877,000 children under the age of 6 years of age are in some form of childcare or have parents who are in the workforce. So with that many families in the workforce, employers are bound to hear about child care issues, and we know in fact that they are. But more so than that, even the Census Bureau data shows that parents who work part-time cite child care as one of the primary reasons why they're not working full-time. And 94% of those turn out to be women. Mm-hmm. Harvard Business School in 2019 conducted a study that showed 73% of employees are responsible for some type of caregiving. That could be child care, caring for young children, it could be caring for elders, it could be caring for another family member, yet only 15% of employers allow working families time off without a loss of pay to be able to attend to family matters, even though 86% of their employees wish they would. And then finally, the National Survey of Children's Health showed that nearly 2 million families across the country with children birth to 5 quit a job, left a job, or did not take a job because of child care issues within the last 12 months. So once again, employers see firsthand that the child care issues their employees face directly translates to lost productivity, higher absenteeism, increased turnover, the increased costs associated with hiring and training new employees, and difficulty recruiting skilled employees, which we tend to see here in the North Country quite a bit, mm-hmm. whether it's through the universities or hospital systems. So once again, it's something that directly relates to their bottom line. So acknowledging and understanding that their employees truly do have child care issues is critical for their success, right. and their growth. Right.
So, and this of course isn't just a North Country issue. The lack of affordable and high quality mm-hmm. child care affects the business climate everywhere in the United States. Give us a sense, Bruce, of what some of the national studies have shown about this, because that's a good way to get a snapshot of the problem sure. at the national level, but it's mirrored here locally, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Same stats.
Yeah. And in fact, we went to one report that most employers or employers that may have any number of employees would recognize, and that's the National Society for Human Resource Management, or SHRM as it's called. If chances are, if you have several employees, you or your human resources people are members of SHRM because of the products and services they make available to employers. But that study, which was done in 2016-17, shows that more employers are allowing employees to return back to work gradually after childbirth or an adoption, and that's up fairly significantly from what it was in 2012. But at the same time, fewer employees today are allowing our employers are allowing their employees time off without losing pay to attend to family needs, and that has come down somewhat significantly since 2016.
You know, one of my daughter-in-laws works for a company that gives 3 months of maternity leave and then another month of graduated back to work. And that has made their family life significantly better because they didn't have to drop a baby off to daycare within 2 weeks, which is unfortunately what happens for many families in that situation, or even in the same case of an adoption. You were finally able to adopt a baby and you have to go back to work because you have no time off that you can access. And New York State is one of the few states that is doing a better job about that, but it still isn't universal, and it isn't something that our American society recognizes as an important family value to offer. In fact, lack of childcare is particularly an American problem. The U.S. does not have a national childcare policy, unlike every other developed country in the world. So in the face of that lack, families are really thrown on their own to put together a patchwork of childcare that meets their employment needs. And when both parents are in the workforce, which is the usual case these days, those needs can be really complex and varied. The Child Care Council, Bruce, has a wonderful one-page resource for employers. It's called Child Care Issues That Affect Your Bottom Line. How does this list of 20 profitable employer strategies help employers? And I'm just going to hold it up here because it really is a terrific one-pager. And it's front and back, and tons of really great ideas on this.
I think the biggest thing when we put that together was to try to come up with a safe place for everyone to begin. Whether it's the employer, the employees speaking with their employers, and or members of our staff working with employees and employers, it's a very safe place to begin. Because if we look at the options that are on that list, and we'll get into some of them, there's something on that list for every employer that an employer could look at and potentially implement next Monday. Some things obviously are more in depth and more detailed, and there may be some costs associated that are not going to be as quickly able to implement, but by and large there's several of these items on this list that an employer could implement next week, and if nothing else, it acknowledges the struggles the employees face, it shows a willingness to try to offer some support. And again, it gives everybody a safe place to start the discussion. We're not going to solve it overnight, but it gives everybody a place to start. Right.
Well, just give us a few examples of what's on there, because there are some great, and they're not necessarily high-cost solutions. There can actually be some pretty low-cost solutions. And again, it changes the work environment, doesn't it? When the employer and the employees recognize that there's a common problem that they can work to solve.
We've said it often that one of the biggest things that an employer can do is acknowledge the fact that the issue is there. It's no longer a family problem because their issues are affecting productivity and bottom line. So now it is an employer issue. So acknowledgement first and foremost, as far as I'm concerned. Simple things, if we refer back to the SHRM study, allowing the gradual or phased-in back-to-work schedule, about 52% of major employers do that. Allowing a compressed work week, where maybe it's a 3-day week with longer hours but fewer days, or a 4-day week with longer hours. Again, about 43% of major employers do that. One thing that's going to be really critical for families with young children is going to be allowing employees options as to what shifts they may work. I totally understand seniority, and I respect seniority, but there may well be senior employees who choose to or would rather work evenings and or overnights that single mom or single dad or that struggling young family may not be able to do, which may result in them not being able to take a position with your company. Dependent care assistance programs was quite interesting to look at that, and I think we're all familiar with what they are. It's the ability to use a multitude of tools, but pre-tax dollars for medical expenses, child care expenses, things of that nature. That showed that those statistics had dropped over the last year since this study from where they were in 2012, and I was very surprised to see that. because sometimes those are very simple to implement and very cost effective too. One of the easiest, and I go back to the early 1990s, and we used to do workplace seminars. We would go into employers, they would pick topics that they might want a presentation on. It wouldn't only be ourselves, it would be other agencies as well. But we would go in and do a 15-minute seminar on childcare. What to look for, what are the current statistics, what's the current conditions. There could be brief sessions on parenting, or dealing with difficult children, or potty training, or biting, or any number of issues. We used to do that, and that seems to have faded away. We have not had a call to do those types of presentations in years. There isn't any cost associated with that because you're using local resources, local agencies to bring information into your employees. And again, it's a great tool to help that employee. It may just be one through a scenario they're experiencing, and it hasn't cost anything, other than allowing 15 minutes of that time, of that employee's time.
Well, hopefully, maybe you'll get some calls after the show goes up, because that does sound like a terrific resource. And again, it's a little bit of time, so no, crazy not to do it. You know, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot lately about in the employee-employer relationship line is we're right in the middle of the ramping up of the coronavirus epidemic. It has finally hit here in the United States. We've seen some of the things that have been happening in other countries where it's been endemic for a longer period of time. We know there are businesses in other places that have had to shut down or try to operate with much reduced workforces because of illness. Here in this country, public health officials have already been talking about the possibility of shutting down schools and daycares as a way to stop the transmission of disease if it gets a real hold in our communities. So the effects of those shutdowns on businesses are real, and they could be crippling if they have to be put into place. So businesses should really be planning now for ways to help their employees get through this crisis and still stay in business. So your employer strategy has some good ideas along those lines. Why don't you just outline a couple of them for people to start thinking about now?
Well, it's something that, you know, God forbid we have to experience, but whether we do or we don't, we need to be prepared for it. And should something like that actually occur here to the extent that it's occurring overseas, it's going to present a serious challenge for everyone, from our healthcare community to our employers, families. It's going to be a serious challenge. Depending on what avenue this takes, there are clearly some simple opportunities. If the work that the employee is doing is capable of being done remotely or telecommuting, I mean, clearly those are options that are available. Using flexible schedules is certainly going to be another one, because family members may have to be caring for other family members who may be affected by this. Making sure that your employees are aware of community resources that are out there. If you end up having to shut your business down for a week or 2 weeks, or if the supply of parts that you use in your facility is shut down and you have to lay employees off, starting now developing the list of resources that are available for your staff is critical. And again, it's stuff that you can do now, and it's stuff that we should have on hand anyways, because we never know when you're going to have a natural disaster. You know, look at Tennessee last night.
Yes,
and
exactly.
The tornadoes that swept through Tennessee, or in Texas a few months ago. I mean, your business may be adversely affected by something you have absolutely no control over, and you're going to want to make sure that your employees are taken care of to the best of your ability. And if that's simply providing resources, community resources to them, then that's a start.
And disaster preparedness is something that should be on everybody's mind all the time, because people who are prepared don't panic. And panic is one of the worst things to make a situation better, isn't it? And
hats off to the State Office of Children and Family Services. There have already been correspondence that's been provided to our licensed registered child care programs across the state, with precautions that they can take and suggestions for plans that they need to start looking at now. Again, whether it's the coronavirus, whether it's the flu, whether it's a natural disaster, there certainly needs to be plans in place for emergencies.
Great, that's good to hear. So the bottom line for businesses has to be the cost to benefit ratio when all is said and done. What does making childcare an employment strategy do for an employer's profitability? Because a lot of times that's going to be the bottom line. That's what somebody's going to want to know. Convince me that it will make me money and I will do it.
Well, it absolutely should be a bottom line issue as well as as an employee benefit issue, because if you do show a genuine concern for the scenarios that your families, your employers are going, or employees are going through, that relationship between the employer and the employee is going to grow. The sense of dedication to that employer will grow. I can honestly speak from our own agency's perspective that, and I realize it's different in many respects from manufacturing or maybe a hospital situation, but we have always maintained that your family is more important than anything we do in the office. Someone else can pick up and cover for a day or two if you need that emergency break, no questions asked. So again, I think if you show that regard for what the families may be going through, you're going to get the reward back tenfold. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's going to be a more productive workforce. It's going to be a happier workforce. You're not only going to see stress levels going down in your employees, but your management staff. You're going to see reductions in stress because everybody's scrambling trying to figure out who's covering what shift or who's covering the next week. And the piece that every employer will understand, but I'm not sure we always think about, is if an employee leaves because they're dissatisfied or if because they just cannot find a way to make their child care arrangements work, you have to recruit, hire, and train a new employee. Many statistics will state that could be as much as 150% of that salaried position. Mm-hmm. So by showing and making some efforts to acknowledge these issues, you literally should be able to save on your bottom line.
And one of the things we know about childcare, especially locally, is that it's just not available. So even if one employee leaves because they can't make a childcare situation work, there's no guarantee the next employee won't be faced with the same dilemma. And so it may be a revolving door simply because that it's just such a pervasive problem in our society.
Although I do hope that if an employer is faced with an employee that has a challenging child care issue or any child care issue, that they are putting that employee in touch with our office, because Dee Burlingame is wonderful at working with families where we find that there is no source of regulated childcare available within their community. She's wonderful at exploring and brainstorming all kinds of options and ideas that a family may not have thought about. So you may be able to avoid losing that employee simply by referring them to us as a benefit.
And of course, one of the things is that if somebody's coming into the area from outside, they really have no idea what the resources are. So this is, again, inviting you to come in and talk to the employees is also a great way to put them in touch with community resources that someone just may not have encountered before.
We have been contacted by prospective professors and prospective doctors who are considering coming to one of the universities or colleges or one of the healthcare facilities in the area. We have been contacted by them to find out what is the child care situation in the community that I may be going to, what are my options. And oftentimes they will be interviewing those child care programs or providers long before they make their decision whether they're going to come or not.
And we know from just the economic demographics of certainly in St. Lawrence County, the education business and the healthcare business are our two biggest employers. So those are two places where the need is the greatest. And again, certainly in terms of healthcare, you're talking about people who are going to be doing some shift work.
Absolutely.
In order to cover the needs 24/7, that means somebody's got to be working those off hours.
And I certainly can assure you that our healthcare systems across the county are well aware of what those needs are and those concerns are.
So Bruce, what are some of the other kind of things that employers can do to continue that discussion, not only with their employees, but with resources in the community to address this really, really central employment issue?
From my perspective, and again, from the number of years that we've been at this, I want employers to acknowledge that childcare is hidden infrastructure. It is essential to workforce and economic development within our county and your business and our state and our country. I want to make sure that they talk about it. And I don't mean talking about it in staff meetings or management meetings. I want them to talk about it with local officials, state officials, national officials. Let those people know how childcare is affecting your bottom line or your inability to recruit qualified personnel for your business. We do our own advocacy work. We always try to reach out and speak with legislators and talk about the issues and the needs that are there. But if they hear from our business leaders, they're going to have a totally different platform and a totally different ear. So, my takeaway from trying to work with employers and expand our work with employers is we need your voice. We need you to lend our voice, to lend credibility to the fact that childcare really is critical infrastructure. And if we're going to succeed and if we're going to have economic growth and workforce development, we need that, just like we need information technology.
And this actually was a topic of conversation a few months ago at the County Chamber of Commerce, wasn't it? They really did spend a lot of time focusing on childcare as a critical need that was not being met.
I know there have been discussions at the county chamber level. It has been interesting to see the change in beyond that, and some of the events that we have participated in. In 2019, we made a concerted effort to devote time, attention, and participation in economic and workforce development meetings or functions throughout the region. So going back to in June of 2019, I co-presented with a representative from the governor's office at the North Country Regional Economic Development Council meeting in Lake Placid. We followed that with presenting at the North Country Regional Economic Council Child Care Summit that they held in Watertown. Followed that with Connecting Business and Education Forum up in Plattsburgh that was hosted by their Workforce Development Board, and the Placemaking Summit, again through the Development Council, that was held in Clayton, and then finally the North Country Symposium at St. Lawrence University. At all of those events, and at two events, childcare was the topic of the conversation. But at all of those events, childcare was a topic of conversation. And I think our presence at those events has led to outreach to our office by some of our major employers. We've already spoken with some of our major employers, and we look forward to meeting and speaking with a lot more of them as we move forward. But I think a lot of that really hinged upon our involvement in those meetings, and it's like, oh, I didn't know you were there. I didn't know who you were. So that was a huge exposure for us. And I hope that it will evolve into something much larger than it is right now.
One of the things that I say here at North Country Matters is that we are resource rich in this area, but we're information poor. We don't know who we need to know, we don't know what we need to ask, we don't know who to ask those things of. So right now, Bruce, there are no businesses that actually have a daycare center associated with them. Is that correct up here in the North Country?
True, we do have businesses where there are daycare centers on site, but the extent of which they are supporting the center is limited, but it certainly benefits the program. But in terms of a true corporate type childcare center, my wife worked at a corporate daycare center at O'Brien and Gear Engineering in Syracuse, full daycare center on site. Within our area, none that I'm aware of, no. I can't speak to everybody's cafeteria plan that they have available to employees, whether it's the Dependent Care Advantage and things like that, but hopefully as we work with more employers, we'll be able to gather that information and know a lot more about the other services that employers are providing. But
certainly for the larger employers, it's an option that they could be exploring with your office, correct?
It's an option they could explore. I will certainly acknowledge that costs and the process that they would have to go through can be a challenge, but then I offset that with what's the benefit. You know, if we have an entity that's trying to go out and open a daycare center within their corporate environment with the idea that it's going to make money, chances are it's not. So I think it has to be viewed from a benefit standpoint as well. And as we have talked in other conversations, the best scenario for most child care centers is to break even. That's the best scenario that most of them can hope for.
But if you look at it as an employee benefit, then that changes the conversation, doesn't it? Because if it's not meant to be a for-profit, then you can actually provide a service that will be of a huge benefit to your employees.
It can be, and I'll acknowledge and admit right up front, it certainly is not for everyone, but there are potential prospects within the North Country who could explore something like this.
So, Bruce, how can the Child Care Council partner with local employers to solve the child care problems that benefit everybody? Talk about how, what you can do for businesses and the kind of outreach that they can expect from you.
So, as I said, we have met with some of our employers already, within weeks of many of these events taking place. First and foremost is the opportunity to go in and present to the owner or management just a little bit about what is the child care situation in St. Lawrence County, what are 20 profitable strategies that you could look at and explore, pick and choose what might work for you, which may be easiest for you to implement. We can do the on-site type work seminars, we can survey needs of employees. We can identify for employees where child care is located, whether it's school district or by zip code, providing an enhanced level of referral to try to help them. But I think, again, the biggest thing is just simply, if you're hearing about or if you know that there are issues, and child care being probably just one of many issues that face businesses, we are there. There is no cost to have us come in and meet with you. And for the vast majority of our services, there is no cost to you or to your employees. We are there as a resource. We're funded through New York State. This is our job. This is what we do.
So don't be shy. Don't be shy. And I will have the contact information as part of this video when we do the editing so that people will know how to get a hold of you folks. And just for your office is in Ogdensburg, so explain a little bit about where you're located and how you operate.
Sure. We are in Ford Street, right downtown Ogdensburg. We've been in downtown Ogdensburg from the beginning, and that is somewhat strategic because the largest number of child care providers tends to be in the Ogdensburg area, and the largest number of legally exempt child care providers who are exempt from regulation also tend to be in the Ogdensburg area. Not that there aren't others throughout the county, but that tends to be the largest concentration. So we are there. We are open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4. If I can step back one time, I want to make sure that if we have employers who are listening to this or watching this, that I need to acknowledge that employees have struggled with child care issues for decades, forever. But it's not until recent times that we see employers stepping up and stepping forward and acknowledging, we hear you, we know it's a problem, and now reaching out to try to bring us and other agencies in to help employees solve issues that affect their family, whether it's child care or whether it's dependent care or other issues. So again, I want to make sure that we acknowledge that there is a shift in the mindset of a lot of our employers today, and I congratulate them for that, and hopefully this continues.
Well, the bottom line will be that if those employers who do take this as a serious issue and do this kind of outreach work with their employees and with agencies like yours, the bottom line is that they're going to be more successful, they're going to have a better workplace, and that's to everybody's benefit, not just the employer but also the employees and their families.
Exactly, and again, that the dedication that can be seen as a result of working with employees on issues that you may not have worked with them on before, or issues that may have been seen as family issues. I truly think employers can see a significant change in the attitudes of their workforce.
Well, it's all about loyalty, isn't it? And that loyalty goes both ways.
It does.
So that's an important thing. Thank you, Bruce. This has been a very important conversation. I appreciate your time and your expertise on this area, because it is a big issue, and it's one that there are solutions to, so we just all have to work towards them.
There are.
So these conversations are a production of North Country Matters, which is filmed here in the Fred W. Cleveland Computer Center of the Potsdam Public Library. These shows are a civic collaboration between the League of Women Voters of St. Lawrence County and the Potsdam Public Library. Until next time, remember, our North Country Matters. Bruce, thank you. It's a great conversation.
Thank you very much.